Hi. Just before this video begins, I just want to make a quick note. I've started to live stream some of my deconstructions on YouTube in order to get into some of the finer details about what the producer did in order to make these tracks. And I was doing just that last Sunday, where I was deconstructing Fatboy Slim's Praise You, when the man, the myth, the legend, Norman Cook decided to drop by my stream to say hi. It was a fantastic moment, and it's been very well received, which I really appreciate. I'm going to link that above here if you want to check that out. But the reason that I'm making this note is because I recorded this video a couple of days before my live stream. And so I've made some notes in the video, as you will see, but please understand that some of the information I didn't have before I talked to Norman. Anyway, thanks for listening. Now on to the video. Carl Boltzmann here. Welcome back to my studio. In this video, I'm going to be deconstructing Fatboy Slim's 1998 track, Praise You, from his album, You've Come a Long Way, Baby.
We've come a long, long way together, through the hard times and the good. I have to celebrate you, baby. I have to praise you like I should.
So after making this deconstruction, my respect for this track went up tenfold, and I hope to demonstrate to you guys just how interesting and unique it is to build such a phenomenal pop song off of samples. From the piano to the vocals, to some of the backup vocals and the rhythms. It's very unique, and not many producers would be able to do this. So on that note, let's actually start with that piano. And it is sampled from Hoyt, Axton, and James B. Lansing's sound, and the track is Balance and Rehearsal from the 1973 record Sessions.
Michael, I hear you saying something out there, but I don't pick you up at all.
No, I'd just like to run it a few more times.
Yeah, okay.
That's where they're stopping, right?
And the lyric is, might keep your fantastic ball. Fantastic would be the key.
And so my understanding is what this record was, James B. Lansing stands for JBL, and they made speakers and headphones and that kind of thing. And this record was recorded as an example that you could play on like a display stereo setup to kind of show the quality of the speakers and the stereo. And what this is a recording of Hoyt Axton and his band, but it's just multiple microphones set up in the studio and everything's panned left to right. And so that's good news, obviously, for sampling. What I love about this, though, really is the obscurity of this sample on this record. And I also love the sort of irony behind this, because you have a band that is rehearsing, and presumably they're trying to make a song that people want to listen to, maybe a hit. And then within this rehearsal, the pianist is just kind of playing this for fun. But here is a riff that ended up being something really special. And it took Norman Cook's ear to hear that and go, man, that could be a pop song. You don't need something super complicated to make something good. The concept just has to be really good. That's the most important thing. And so let's go ahead and sample this. You can hear that it's pitch shifted up. And let's go ahead and put this in the right channel, because there's all sorts of talking in the left channel. And I want to ask you guys, did you ever notice the talking in the intro here for Praise You? Let me know in the comments, because I actually always thought that it was an artifact from the video, but it turns out that it was, in fact, in the sample, which is really cool. So let's go ahead here and let's pitch shift this up by 1 and see how it sounds. Okay, so now our sample's sharp, so let's pull it down and see if we can find the right pitch. Okay, that sounds right to me. Now let's try to match these transients with his so that we get the timing just right. And then there's one note I want to point out here at the end of the sample. You can hear this voice come in. And Norman Cook decided to take that out. And the way that he did that was he just removed this part, and then he took part of the rest of this note and he reversed it. And I'm not sure how long that would have taken on the samplers he was using at the time, but it probably would have been a total pain in the ass compared to the way it works nowadays. And you can hear that here in his. Do you hear that backwards piano? Let's hear how it sounds on ours. Okay, so you can tell the sound isn't quite right, and part of that actually has to do with the rip of this track that I have. There is very little of this online as far as I could find. I could find 2 different rips, and they both sounded pretty bad. And so we're just going to have to do our best with EQing. One thing I know that he did do was take away a significant portion of the bass in the piano, the low mids in the bass. And the reason he did that is that anytime you hear a piano in pop music, if there's any other instrumentation, it is EQ'd in a way that you only really have kind of high mids and highs. They take out a lot of the lows because that is taken up by like the drums and the bass and, you know, different elements. Because the piano has so many frequencies, it has such a wide frequency range, it can be difficult to fit it in with other instruments. Now, the other thing that I hear is a bit of a wider stereo field in his piano. Now, because we made ours mono by putting it in the right channel, what I'm going to do is we're going to put a delay on this, and I'm just going to offset the left and the right delay to create a bit of a stereo effect. So now that we have the piano, let's talk about the excellent vocals.
We've come a long, long way together, through the hard times and the good. I have to celebrate you, baby. I have to praise you like I should. You're so rare, so fine. I'm so glad you're mine. You're so rare, so fine. I'm so glad you're mine. You make me.
So very similar to DJ Shadow's classic Blood on the Motorway, which I also deconstructed, which I'll link up above. This track also blew me away with the fact that the vocals were sampled. It's incredible to me how you can make an entire 4-minute pop song with a proper chorus and a bridge and everything else with just these 4 bars. I think it's a good lesson for other producers too, that you don't necessarily need all that much. It's about the quality of the content. And because these vocals are so soulful and honest, and they're sung so well, and the content of the lyrics is so excellent, you don't need much more than that to have people attach themselves to your music. Now let's get into how he sampled this.
We've come a long, long way together.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to warp this clip, and I'm going to put the algorithm on complex, which I've done a few times in the past. And what this does is it allows you to slow it down and speed it up without adding too many artifacts to the voice. It does it in a pretty non-destructive way.
We've come a long, long.
So I'm going to speed this up a little bit.
We've come a long, long way together. We've come a long, long way together, through the hard times and the good.
So you can kind of match it up that way. Now, again, I don't know exactly what he would have done. If you do know, let me know in the comments. I would love to know what his technique was to have achieved this with the voice and make it sound so good.
We've come a long, long way together, through the hard times and the good. I have to.
So obviously we're still going to have to move some things around.
I have to celebrate you, baby. I have to praise you like I...
And then the next sample to come in is this percussion. And that percussion was sampled from Rare Earth and their track What I'd Say from the 1971 album One World. So all of that percussion is sampled from here at the end. And so let's go ahead and take that and add it into the rest of the track.
Praise you like I should.
So you hear the next sample come in, which is the bongos, and they're mostly in the left ear. Now, I don't know where those bongos were sampled, but it's quite easy to replicate quite convincing bongos with some MIDI instruments. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that now. And so you can hear the groove. And the next element to come in is super important, and it's the bass line. So as most of you probably know, Norman Cook, before he became Fatboy Slim, was the bassist for a pretty popular band called the House Martins.
What a good place to be. Don't believe I speak a different language and it's never really happened to me. Don't believe I, oh no, 'cause it's never been happened to me. Don't believe I.
So obviously he knows his way around the bass and how to make a proper bass line. I haven't read anywhere that he played the bass for this track, but it seems very likely that he did, because why wouldn't he? So because it's not a sample, I just had to re-record the bass line like I did for the bongos. And so here we go, we kind of get into the breakdown. When the track comes back in from the build-up, we get the drums. And the drums were sampled from Ruby and their 1976 track, Running Back to Me. So these drums are an excellent demonstration of what can be done with multiple pieces of percussion in your track, because these drums that Norman sampled are actually pretty crude and not all that ripe for sampling. The overall sound of these drums is mediocre at best. The best element of these drums is definitely the hi-hat. For the most part, the snare sounds horrible. It's drowned in reverb, and it's just not recorded very well. It's not engineered very well. But we have to work with what we have. And what I want you to listen to when we mix everything together is how the different loops of percussion fit together with this drum loop to create something that is so much better than the original drum loop. And Fatboy Slim is really, really good at doing that. So all of these kind of mid-lows need to be erased because they sound horrible. Let's go ahead and do that. We're going to pump up some highs as well as the bass drum. Now, the other thing I'm going to do is add some compression to this as well. So let's hear what we have. So let's talk about that excellent disco guitar. It comes from a very unlikely source, which is Walt Disney Records Studio Group, and their track, It's a Small World, from the 1979 album Mickey Mouse Disco. Now, the intro guitar that was sampled is excellent, but the rest of that track is a literal torture session to sit through. But thankfully, we don't have to sit through it because he only sampled that intro. So the first thing we have to do is EQ out the bass. And we're only interested in that guitar, obviously. Let's go ahead and see how it fits. So it needs to be sped up, obviously. It only needs to go up about half a semitone. Okay, so we have it up half a semitone. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to consolidate this, and that's sort of like rendering a new track. And so after I'm done that, I'm going to slow this clip down a little bit to try to match the tempo of the track. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move things around a little bit so they match a bit better. All right, so let's hear how it's coming together. So I'm going to point out a couple things in the chorus here, where Norman Cook repeats the loop, I have to praise you. Now, one element is that this disco guitar, he kind of changed the riff a little bit around. Now, the other weird thing is that I'm hearing a pitch shift on the voice here to add a little bit of emphasis to I have to.
I have to pray. I have to pray.
And so the one is up by 9 semitones and the other is up by 5. That's what I hear in Praise You. Let me know if you hear it as well.
I have to praise you. I have to praise you. I have to praise you.
And now comes in sort of the bridge, a nice change in the track. And that Rhodes keyboard comes from Steve Miller Band, and they're a 1968 track, Lucky Man. And so first things first, let's get the left of the right channel. So it's the right channel. And then it's obviously sped up because the pitch is much higher.
Praise you.
So first things first, we got to get this bass out of here because it's conflicting with the other bass we have.
Praise you.
And then we need to fix the timing here a little bit because this hit does not match. So let's hear how that sounds.
Praise you.
Okay, so that's sounding great. But what really makes this bridge are those background vocals. And those were sampled again from a very unlikely source, and that is Ed Fournier and Ricky Sheldon and their track Fat Albert Theme from 1973.
Hey, 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 it's Fat Albert, and I'm gonna sing a song for you. And Bill's gonna show you a thing or two. You'll have some fun now with me and all the gang, learning from each other while we do our thing. Na, 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 gonna have a good time. Hey, hey.
This sample is just fantastic. It is so simple, but it makes this bridge happen. Okay, so again, I'm going to consolidate this clip, and we're going to try to, we're going to warp it again, put the algorithm on complex, and we're going to shorten the loop here without changing the pitch. Okay, so let's see how that sounds in the mix. So that concludes my deconstruction of Fatboy Slim's Praise You. Now, if you like this kind of thing, please consider giving this video a thumbs up. And if you really like this kind of content, please consider subscribing to my channel. And on that note, I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you in the next video.